In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace a front wheel bearing on your Toyota Highlander. Remove your 5 21mm lug nuts. Remove the front wheel. Remove the two 17mm caliper bolts. Hang the caliper up out of the way. Remove the rotor. Remove the cotter pin out of the outer tie rod ball joint. $17mm socket. Remove the nut on the end of the ball joint. Using a large hammer, you can hit on the side of the knuckle where the ball joint sits to release it, or you can use a ball joint puller. Once it's released, you can remove the ball joint from the knuckle. Remove the axle nut using a 30mm socket. I'm going to smack the end of the axle because I cannot get it to move freely on the splines. I'm going to use a soft face hammer. Now that it moves freely. Using a 12mm socket, we're going to release the brake hose bracket and the wheel speed sensor bracket, or the ABS sensor bracket. Pull that straight off, pull that up and out of the way. Do not twist this wire as best as you can. We're going to remove this ABS harness bracket. It's a plastic bracket. There's 2 tabs, one on each side. Pull outward and then straight off. Using a 10mm socket, we're going to remove the ABS sensor out of the knuckle. Using a 22mm wrench and a 22mm socket, we're going to hold the head of the bolt and take the nut off. Leave the bolt in there and do the same thing on the bottom one. Remove the bolts out of the knuckle. With the strut bolts out, drop the knuckle down forward. You may need to use a flat blade screwdriver or a pry bar. Now we're going to pull the axle out and put it to the side. And just let it hang out there for now. Take the 4 bolts out of the brake dust shield using a 10mm wrench. Remove the brake dust shield. To remove the hub and ball joint on this vehicle, we are going to be using a on-car puller. With the tool set up, go ahead and pull the hub through. Using a pry bar or a flat blade screwdriver, we're going to remove the ring on the back side of the bearing. It's got this band around it that's a little bit bigger. They can get pretty stuck. Try your best not to bend this up. It will have to fit back on the axle unless you have a new one. Once we have the ring off, It exposes the snap ring. Using a pair of snap ring pliers, we are going to remove this. Now that I have one side out, I'm going to go around with a flat blade screwdriver and kind of just pick up. It's good to keep a finger or a hand over it, because these can shoot out. Careful of your eyes. We'll remove the ball joint nut. And remove the knuckle from the car. With our knuckle set up in the press, we're going to press out the wheel bearing. With the bearing set up in the knuckle, we're going to press it in. And press it until it bottoms out. Make sure you have clearance to fit your snap ring back in, and that's how you really know that you're all the way in. Using a torch, we're going to heat up the inner race and make it drop on the hub. The inner race got too hot and it started heating up the hub, so now we're going to cut it off. You want to try your best not to cut the hub at all. To help this, I like to get halfway through and then take a chisel, put it in here, and try and crack the race. We're going to press the hub back into the bearing. We're going to install the snap ring back into the knuckle. Install the little ring that we took off. If you bent it at all, try and get it back to where it was. Any imperfections. This little slot is for the wheel speed sensor. Make sure you line that up when you're installing this. Use a soft face mallet and just little taps. You may need to give it a hard tap. Install the knuckle. Start with a ball joint. If your axle is out, I recommend torquing the ball joint now. You'll torque that to 95 foot-pounds. Put a cotter pin through it. Line your axle up with the splines of the hub. Put it back through. Get your strut bolts in. Put your tie rod back in. Reinstall the rotor. And torque them to 77 foot-pounds. Install the axle nut onto the axle. Tighten it down. Using a bar to hold the hub still, I'm going to torque the axle nut to 216 foot-pounds. Stake the nut so it can't back off. Install the ABS sensor bracket and the brake hose bracket on top of it. Install your 12mm bolt. Install the ABS clip onto the strut. Here, click in. Put that inside of the knuckle. Torque the strut bolts to 215 foot-pounds. Install the ABS sensor into the knuckle. Tighten down the bolt, and we'll torque it to 6 foot-pounds. Put the ball joint stud back into the knuckle. And put your castle nut on. Torque your castle nut to 36 foot-pounds. And then up to an additional 60 degrees, or until a slot in the nut lines up with the hole to be able to put a new cotter pin through. Put in your new cotter pin. And bend the tab down. Install the front wheel. Put in your 5 lug nuts. You will need an alignment after this job is completed. Tighten the lug nuts down in a star pattern to make sure the wheel seat's square. And then with the car on the ground, we'll torque the wheels. Torque your lug nuts to 80 foot-pounds in a star pattern.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.